Hey all, here at OS Reviews, you're watching our video first look and quick review of the Dream Gear My Arcade Retro Arcade console. It's a mini arcade that has a 2.5-inch TFT LCD display and comes equipped with 200 built-in emulation-style games that include several classics and other popular games of the 90s. It's shaped again like a larger arcade console along with the controls, and again it's a very cool maybe desk piece to place on an office or in the home, and also a good idea as a gift because the retail cost of this thing actually isn't that high. You can find it right now in the links down below for around 25 bucks, which really isn't bad at all for a handheld gaming device that has 200 games and a pretty unique collectible style. Now, My Arcade / Dream Gear are present at CES this year, and they typically bring out more of their arcade line and trying to expand upon it. They have larger versions that are slightly larger that fill up a table. There are even smaller ones on a keychain, and they also have dedicated units that are built specifically for one game, as opposed to ones like this, which packs 200 or 300 games into one unit. So if you're a fan of a specific one, you can get it customized, and they do sell those versions as well. Packaging here is very simple. You can see just some basic decorative images of some of the games that it contains, and again, these games shouldn't repeat technically. And there's also on the back here more images of some of the games. It includes chess or checkers, it seems like, and some racing games, so on and so forth. It also requires 3 AA batteries for it to be operated. Unfortunately, there is no way to put in a rechargeable battery or power it by USB, so that is one downside. Now, the My Arcade line also extends to other formats. So if you don't like the look of a arcade machine, or if it's too bulky to be used when on the go, they also have more traditional handheld consoles that also has 200 or 300 built-in games, shaped kind of like a small PSP or a Nintendo Game Boy. So that's also pretty interesting. Sells for the same cost as well, and typically has the same screen size at around 2.5 or 3 inches. Instruction manual right on top tells you how to set it up, how to reset it, how to choose the games with the joystick and the A and B keys, and that's it. Down below here we have just the console itself, and that's it. No other accessories, because again, it's a battery operated as opposed to being rechargeable. Alright, so a quick look at the design and first impressions. The entire thing is made out of plastic, as expected. The marquee on this particular model, I do not believe is backlit. On some of the more expensive ones, they do have backlights on here and also on some of the other accents, which makes it look a little cooler in the dark and more realistic. But on this one, it's a bit more generic. On the top here, we have access just to a screen protector for the display. Now we have a pretty glossy display underneath. Joystick here seems to be a little bit plasticky, a little bit flimsy. It's not too precise or tactile, but it does work in terms of navigating up, down, left, and right, and selecting in between as well. The size is also definitely playable. It's not quite as tiny as some mini arcades I've seen floating around on the internet, but indeed it is going to be pretty small. About the same size overall controls and keys as you would find, I would say, on a standard kind of Game Boy controller. There's also A and B keys for selecting things, start, there's a power key, and also a volume key. So these things are all fairly tactile and responsive. They don't feel too mushy, at least on the A-B keys here. Down below here, My Arcade logo, and again some decorations about some of the games. Galactica looks like, and on the back here we just have a speaker, a dedicated on-off switch, and also the battery compartment. Switching things on, we can see that this is what the interface is like. First impressions would be that the screen actually isn't that bad. It is a typical LCD, it's not IPS, so viewing angles aren't fantastic, but as long as you're looking at it head-on or even from above, it actually remains fairly visible. So if you have this on a desk, you can definitely still see everything. You can see that the interface here, very simple. It just says 201, and you have in a list format all the games. I can use the joystick here to go down one by one, or I can go left and right to switch between pages altogether for quicker navigation. From here we can see that most of the games on here, you get a few classics, F-22, but most of them seem to be lesser known titles. There isn't Pac-Man, at least when I tried searching through I couldn't locate Pac-Man. There's also nothing like Super Mario, so again, some of those more popular titles are missing. With that being said, you still get quite a few games that are enjoyable and fun enough to play with, especially on such a low-cost unit. So let's try playing F-22. You can hear this is what the speaker is like. It's a little bit tinny, but it's not too bad. Again, it comes out from the back. And you do have the option to mute the sound in case you don't like it, so I can tap on volume once and it just mutes it. Start playing the game, and from here you can just navigate up, down, left, and right using the joystick, and then use the A and B keys to kind of shoot and fire at these sprites, the enemy planes that are coming out. Overall, it's fairly smooth and easy to play. One thing I have noticed though is that the joystick sometimes won't be the most precise thing in the world. You do have to kind of apply a little bit of extra force than I was used to on a regular controller, but otherwise the A and B keys are pretty easy to use, and again the frame rates also seem to be reasonable. Again, this is a very simple game, 16-bit, 24-bit game, so we're not talking about crazy graphics in the first place, but you can see how everything remains pretty easy to use. This is Vanguard, a very simple kind of tank-based game where you can navigate your tank and then try to eliminate all the enemies while dodging these potential firing and bombs by these larger tanks, and you have to try and maneuver the maze to make it towards the end, avoiding obstacles. It's a little bit slow moving, but overall it is kind of fun enough to play. You get, I think, 3 lives. Another game, this is called Crystal Ball. Basically you have to navigate this dynamic moving maze and try to avoid these kind of moving enemies or ghosts, and you have to collect all the points. It's kind of similar to Pac-Man, but again, there's a bit more movement involved, and you have to actually move through a maze. But once you've captured all of these and dodged all the obstacles, waited everything to clear, and captured all the dots, the game is ended by going into this portal. Here's a game called Water Pipe, and you can basically see there's an icon that tells you what the shape of the next kind of pipe will be like, and your goal is to complete the entire maze before the time goes down to 0 by creating a path between the first water pipe and the end, and it will change around and you have a few obstacles in your way. So for instance, if I'm satisfied with this, I can put it here, I can create the next one here, something like that, and hopefully I can complete the level in time. A few of the games are also more puzzle based, such as chess, or this is a very classic kind of puzzle game, as opposed to something that is moving or animated or action based. What's interesting here, even though the graphics aren't very impressive, is that you have actually a virtual controller or a cursor that moves up and down, and you can really easily move it using the joystick, and you use this to select things almost like a mini computer or a Linux or a Windows CE based computer. So if I tap on start, you basically have to move these blocks one by one and to switch them around until you get them back to the original format that it was in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you want to exit, you can also tap on the small X at the top here. So very interesting in terms of how the controls are laid out. It reminds me of kind of an emulator on an old computer. Here's a game called Jump Jump. Basically, you have to use these moving platforms that keeps on going down at a consistent speed and make it all the way across to the top before time runs out. And there's also some points that you can collect along the way. So you can collect hearts to get some extra lives along the way. The joystick can be occasionally a little bit difficult to use, but overall it's not too bad. There are also some other classic titles on here. You have a few racing games, there's also checkers, there's chess, and what's called Mouse Snake is actually Minesweeper. So some of the names have been kind of slightly tweaked, but you can see here from the interface, tapping on start, basically you tap on these icons and then you try to avoid hitting on a bomb and destroying the entire thing, and then of course you can win the game at the end if you survive. That's more or less it for the Dream Gear My Arcade Retro Machine. Obviously we haven't gone through all of the titles, that would take us too long, but you get a good sense of some of the games on here. Some are better, some are worse, depending on your preferences. There's a good mix of action-based games and also puzzle-based games on board. Overall though, I would say there's a handful of games on here that I think are pretty fun to play with. Some of the others are mostly for fillers. Even though none of the games are repeated, they also aren't the most popular titles, such as, again, Pac-Man, it's missing. Super Mario World is also missing. The controls are mapped correctly though, and the A and B keys are tactile and responsive. The screen is also adequately large and bright in my testing. One thing is, I did think that the joystick was a little bit unsensitive if you were playing games that required really fast movements, or you have to press a little bit firmly. So that is one potential downside. I think this is a very cool gift idea. It's a good conversation starter if you're into retro gaming. It would be something nice to put on a bookshelf or onto a desk, and at around $20, it's not a bad buy at all for the price. but overall not a bad choice to give to someone or to just, again, display somewhere on your desk or around the house. For the point of size comparison, here is an iPhone 6 Plus or 6S Plus. You can see here that it's about the same in terms of the height, so it's not a tiny unit, even though it is still quite portable in terms of overall dimensions. So thanks for watching this video here at OS Reviews. This has been a closer look at the Dream Gear My Arcade Retro Arcade machine.